All right, so this is the tool inside of Camera Raw 5. It's called the adjustment brush. I'm going to go ahead and open up the image for this lesson inside of Camera Raw. And if you look in the top little toolbar up here, you'll see the adjustment brush. Now, before I even get to it, I do want to do a quick graduated filter. We talked about this in the last video. And I'm just going to bring my exposure down. And I'm going to bring the saturation up for it. And what I want to do is bring back my sky. And I could do it with the brush, but honestly, it's a whole lot easier with the graduated filter because I don't have to brush up there. So we've brought our sky back. It might be a little too dark. Increase the saturation just a little bit up here. And I might even increase the contrast some. Okay, so that's the sky. Now, here's what happens. We're going to go to the adjustment brush. You can come up here to the toolbar or just click or hit the letter K, and that's a shortcut for it. And when you get in here, you're going to see the sliders at the top look a lot like they did inside of the graduated filter. We have the same sliders here, but at the bottom, you also have some sliders that control your brush. Okay. Now, before we even do anything, let's just take a look at the brush because it's almost just like a brush in Photoshop. You can make it larger and smaller with the right and left bracket keys. So right bracket key makes it larger, left bracket key makes it smaller. All right. If you throw the shift key into that combination, so shift right bracket changes the softness or the feathering. You see the feather setting down in the lower right hand corner? It's at 100 now. If I hit shift left bracket, see how it's changing? All right, and you see the solid outline in the middle of the brush, and you see the dotted outline on the outside. So that feathering shows you it's going to feather between the solid and the dotted outline. So a low feather setting here, it means it's going to be a very harsh edge brush, and a high feather setting means it's going to be a softer edge brush. Okay, and what we're going to do here is I'm going to bring the exposure up. And I'm just going to take my saturation, bring that back down to 0 as well as contrast. And I'm just going to click over. I'm going to make a smaller brush, by the way. I'm going to click over in the rocks because as we did that graduated filter, we darkened the sky, but we also darkened the rocks a lot. So I'm going to click on the rocks and just start to paint here. And you'll see that we're brightening them, but not too much, which means I can come over here and just increase my exposure slider and start to do it more. Now, just this edge tells me that I spilled too much over into the sky. You've got an erase option up here. So right now we're in add mode. So whenever I click and drag and paint, I'm adding to it. Okay. Well, I can switch over to erase mode and take away from the brush area, or I can hold down the keyboard shortcut, which is Option on Mac, Alt on PC, and just click up here and just erase it from the sky. So that just temporarily goes over into erase mode, and when I let go, I'm back in add mode. Now I can come over to the other side and I can brush again and still continue to add to this this whole brush selection that I've made. But what happens if I want to control this separately from what I did over here? Okay, because you can see if I increase the exposure, I increase the exposure on both the left and the right hand side. And I might not want to do that. I might want to control this separately from the left side. Well, the way that I can do it is I'm going to undo a couple of times here. And now I'm back to where I've only made changes over on the left side. I'm going to come over to the top of the adjustment brush panel and click on New. Now I'm going to paint on these rocks over here. All right. But what it's done is, see this little circle over here? This is a pin. It has dropped another pin down on the image, which means I have a whole separate adjustment brush area, which means I can control it individually from the other side. So as I decrease the exposure here, notice it changes on the right, but it leaves what was over on the left. It leaves all that alone. So now I'm not changing both at the same time. Okay. If I wanted to change the left side, just come over here and click on the pin. And you'll always know what pin is active because, as I'm going to zoom in for you, because you can see it's got a little dot right in the middle of it. That means that that pin is active. That's the selected pin, if you will. Okay? And that overlay that you see, that overlay is showing me what I've brushed over. So it's a way of a kind of a visual cue to show you what you've brushed. If it gets in the way, or if the color of the overlay starts to look too much like the color of what you're brushing on, if you go down to the bottom corner here, you can change that overlay color. Okay, so you can change the overlay color. I can change it to blue if I wanted to, or I could just change it to a very neutral color like white. So now as I hover over it, you can see it just shows white. So you have control over just about every aspect of this. Now let's take a look at the rock down here. I want to create a new brush, so I'm going to click on new, and I want to paint around the rock. So I'm going to increase the exposure, not that much though, and I'm going to start to paint around the rock and watch what happens. See how my brushing starts to spill over onto the sand around the rock. So that would mean that I'd have to make my brush a lot smaller and zoom in and get really, really detailed. Okay, and I don't want to do that. So I'm going to click on this pin, and if I click on it, then I can just hit the delete key and I can delete it and I can start from scratch again. And this time I'm going to go down to the auto mask setting. And I'm going to turn on auto mask, and now I'm going to paint around the edges of the rock here and see how the camera raw is actually keeping me from spilling over onto the sand. That's because it's using an auto mask setting, which is basically like an edge detection. So it's keeping me from spilling over onto the sand there. So sometimes it'll work good, sometimes not. It works well here because I have a very contrasty edge, so it works really good there. And then again, since this is a whole new pin, I can control the exposure in any one of the sliders individually from the two I have up at the top. Now let's take a look at the sand. I'm going to create another new brush, and I'm going to increase the size of this one. I'm also going to turn auto mask off. Auto mask does make the brush more sluggish. So if you don't need it, don't leave it on, because it does take a little bit longer to paint. And I'm actually going to paint on the sand here, and I'm going to do it very, very quickly just to save time. Okay. And up until now, all we've really been working with is exposure. I'm going to bring the exposure down. I don't necessarily want to make it really bright, all right? But what I do want to do is bring some color back down there. So I can come down here to this color setting, and it's got a color swatch, and by default, it's set to this neutral white color. But I can click on the yellow color here, and I can bring some color back into the sand. Now, it probably looks like a little bit too much color here, but I can come down to my saturation and just drop the saturation down a little bit and not bring so much color back in there. Okay, but I can just bring some of the warmer colors that were in there, I can bring those back in. And then I'll hit OK here. And once again, just like everything else, this is its own pin. If you hover over it, it shows you a mask, everything that you've painted over here. And obviously you can see I painted over too much. You'd hopefully be a little bit more careful. But I can change any one of these things at any time. I can come and click on another tool and then go through my settings in Camera Raw and change anything, do whatever I want. Maybe I'll go into my lens corrections here and drag the lens vignetting setting over to the left just to darken the edges. By the way, post-crop vignetting is new. I'm going to cover that in another video, so make sure you check that out because you're going to like that one. But back to the adjustment brush. Let's say now I want to change something about it. I can hit the letter K. That takes me back into my adjustment brush. I have all the pins that are laid out on the photo here. I can just click on one of them. I can make it active, and now I can start to change things. If the pins get annoying, you can turn them off. There's a little option down here at the bottom. You can turn them on and off. And there's also the preview up here. If you want to see what your photo looked like before your adjustment brush settings, just hit the letter P for preview. You can turn them off, and then you can turn them back on. Just hit the letter P, or you can just hit this checkbox. Okay, so turn it off and on. And then the last thing that'll show you here, okay, well, I already showed you this. We looked at it with the graduated filter, but this is all non-destructive. I could click done, and here inside of Camera Raw, all the way to the bottom corner, I could click done, take this back over to Bridge, come back to it in a week, open this up again, and all these changes are going to be here. If I decide I don't like them, come down here to clear all. It gets rid of all the pins, and you're right back to where you were before. Remember, it is Camera Raw, so everything you do in here is non-destructive. But the last thing is the thing that's weird about Camera Raw is it's kind of hard to see a before and after of everything. I can use preview to see the before and after of the panel I'm working in, but I made other changes as well. I did the graduated filter, I did the lens vignetting, One of the things you can do here, and it's going to be hard to show you, but if you hold down the Option key on the Mac or the Alt key on the PC, and this isn't new in Camera Raw 5, this is, we'll go way back, but if you hold down Option or Alt, right below my cursor here, it's a little hard because my screen cuts it off, is a reset button. Okay, so if you hold Option or Alt and then click on Reset, it shows you your before photo. All right, so that's before, and then if you hit Command Z on the Mac or Control Z on the PC, takes you back to after. Okay, so Option click on Reset shows you the before, and then Command or Control Z shows you after. I don't know about you, but that's pretty freaking cool when it comes to Camera Raw. I mean, remember, all this stuff was all done inside of Camera Raw. We haven't gone into Photoshop yet. We haven't done anything in Photoshop. We've gone from here to here, and it's all non-destructive. I can come in here at any point and I can change any of this. Okay? Now make sure you check out the next video, because I'm going to show you some different ways to use the adjustment brush and to do things on your raw photos, some very creative things that frankly, before this adjustment brush, I never thought that we'd be able to do.